wanted to welcome you to this presentation. The presentation is called Brand Cohesion is Everything, Strategy, Tools, and Real Results. And we're very excited to be here today and to take you through some very helpful tips and real-world success stories of brands that put the strategies we're about to share to use. Hi, I'm Eve. I'm Eve Ashworth from Ashworth Creative, of course. I'm one of the founders and CEO of Ashworth Creative here. We are a marketing agency that's been based out of the Hudson Valley, New York for 22 years now. And we just have begun starting to open up an office in Salt Lake City, Utah. So we're straddling both areas at this time. We're also breaking into some new services. And so we're starting to grow a company that has a simple goal in mind, which is the same goal that we had 22 years ago when we started the company. And that is to combine smart strategy with bold creative to help businesses grow. And that's still at the heart of everything that we do.
Hi, I'm Jennifer King. I'm the video production and a project manager here at Ashworth Creative. And just a little bit of background, after starting my career in photojournalism and community arts, I joined Ashworth about 3 years ago now. And I'm using my diverse professional background to help inform my creative approach to client work and project management alike.
Okay, thanks, Jen. So as we mentioned, we're 22 years strong in the marketing field. We built our belief off of creative driving strong results because that's what we see day in, day out for our clients. Whether it's developing marketing strategies or creating video, crafting digital and print ads, or building websites or branding, we craft impactful work that maximizes budgets, builds trust and credibility, and drives real engagement, leads, and sales. We're professional, collaborative, and ego-free, focused on what works and how to make it work even better. Today, we're excited to focus on the importance of brand cohesion.
So we'll be starting off today talking about why brand cohesion matters. And along with each point, we'll share some interesting statistics that illustrate why brand cohesion is a must for every company and organization wanting to be successful in today's business landscape. And we'll brush on key elements of a brand identity, which includes important foundational information everyone should keep in mind when thinking through why brand cohesion matters. After that, we'll discuss how to align your brand, illustrating how our helpful tips were used in real-world success stories through our case studies we'll share today. And finally, we'll end on a helpful action plan so you can get started making sure your brand is cohesive starting today. So there are many reasons why brand cohesion matters, but the 5 reasons we'll be focusing on today are the fact that it builds recognition, builds trust, improves customer experience, supports internal alignment, and drives ROI and growth. And the next few slides will walk through some stats as well and resources to back this point up.
So we can see a pretty big stat here. When you show up consistently with the same visuals, same tone of voice, and the same message plan, that doesn't mean that you're saying the same thing over and over again, but something that's effective, people start to recognize you over time. And that's the first step toward trust. We know that touch points are pretty numerous when it comes to how someone chooses to use your product or purchase your product or use your service. And so in a service-based industry, we're seeing that between 14 and 20 plus touch points are needed. And within a product-based, if you're pushing a product, we see that rising to 50 at least. So you can see that we're in this crowded place right now. Oftentimes referrals to your product and service is going to narrow that down a little bit. But in general, if you're advertising your service or posting on social media, it's really good to keep it very simple and very cohesive. Just doesn't make you recognizable. It elevates the recall that people have within their mind and makes you memorable. It reduces the risk that someone confuses you with a competitor, which happens all the time. And because your look and voice are distinct, it can help you stand out from the crowd. When all of your ads, when all of your creative, when everything works together, they build on each other like building blocks, reinforcing the same story again and again.
And reinforcing that story again and again also builds trust. So beyond recognition, brand cohesion really impacts that trust and loyalty. Because when your brand feels united and professional, people are far more likely to trust and engage with you. In fact, research shows that cohesive branding makes you about 3.5 times more likely to improve your visibility. And as we know, visibility and trust go hand in hand. And it doesn't just stop at that first impression either. When customers have a consistent experience, as Eve mentioned, it builds on itself. With every time they interact with your brand, it builds confidence in your brand within the customers themselves. And that confidence makes them 5 times more likely to buy again and even refer you to others, which is huge.
So another big reason cohesion matters is that 76% of your customers are more likely to choose you over their competitor because they already have a good experience with you. So making sure that even though a client or customer, a patient has already been there, done that, making sure that your cohesiveness is sticky is important because people will come back to you time and time again and be reminded of that great service that you already rendered to them. So, and it improves experience like connected websites, social and emails, it's less confusion, there's more satisfaction on the whole. And this in turn drives revenue. Consistency makes customers 57% more likely to spend more with you. So that's the kicker here, is that we want you to optimize every single part of your communications plan to be able to do less work and make more revenue, which is a great thing.
Absolutely. And to that point, cohesion doesn't just face outward towards your customers, it also keeps your internal team aligned as well. Because clear guidelines we know can help employees and vendors represent the brand in the right way, or at least in a consistent way, and save time by cutting misaligned or potentially misaligned efforts. And here's the catch. What we included here today, the stat that we think is important to keep in mind is while 85% of organizations do have brand guidelines, only about 30% of those are actually enforcing them, which helps kind of illustrate that even in companies that have the right tools or the right guidelines or things in place, misalignment can still happen. So it's important to have a comprehensive approach to cohesion and really, internally align and continue to realign, which we'll talk about later.
So we talked a little bit about ROI and growth, but it does impact the bottom line. Just a 2% increase, for example, in retention can cut business costs by about 10% because you don't have to go out and find new clients or patients. And showing the direct link between cohesion and profitability is important, I think, at this point of the webinar. Companies with consistent branding report significant growth, with 10 to 20% of revenue growth reported on the lower end, and others seeing revenue boosts as high as 33%. In short, brand consistency and cohesion do pay off big time.
So before we move on to how to align your brand to create that cohesion that we're talking about is really important, we kind of need to define the elements of what a brand identity is. And so one thing that we've talked about is using the metaphor of music. So if you think about your brand identity like a symphony, there are a lot of different notes, sometimes they overlap, but ultimately they all work together in harmony to create a beautiful piece of music. And there's a lot of overlap when it comes to the key elements of a brand identity, but we've broken it down here in this framework today to help provide kind of a clear way to understand the different sections that should be and could be considered and how they need to work together to make a strong, cohesive brand. The first one that we're going to talk about is the core identity or foundation of your brand. And put simply, this is who you are. So it kind of answers the question that we have here, who are you? And this often comes together by looking at two things. So what you do and why you do it, as well as how you perceive your brand. So in other words, it's about identifying what drives you and also what sets you apart. These are commonly called and can be referred to as differentiators or key value propositions, but essentially they're the unique qualities that make your brand stand out to clients and potential prospects. And the core elements of a brand identity tend to include mission and purpose, vision, values, personality, and brand positioning. So when these elements are clearly defined and aligned, they provide a strong foundation or core for how your brand shows up in the world. And from that kind of foundation, they can be organized into a set of core pillars, which can be guiding themes that help shape your messaging, marketing, and client experience.
So you might want to take a few seconds just to think of your favorite brand or a brand that you really admire. You probably picture what does come to mind? You probably picture their logo, color, slogan, could be their tagline, just do it, is one that I was on their site yesterday buying a pair of sneakers. And so, you think about how they do what they do, and there's really no reason why you can't do the same. These plus typography, imagery, design, and voice and tone shape you, and they shape your brand, they shape your company, they shape your look and feel, they shape the way that you interact with people. And so consumers sense that when a brand feels confusing or inauthentic, even, I hate to tell you, but even Google is now tracking to see which sites are written by AI or not. I just had a potential client asked me why his pages were not getting indexed online, and it was because all the copy that he'd put on the pages were AI generated. And so this is not authentic information about your brand, and it leads to discomfort and disconnect in both the way that you interact with people and the way they feel about your brand. So keeping consistent and cohesive brand look and feel can help you reach your audiences over and over again, but it can also make you feel comfortable to those that you haven't already reached or are about to reach or are potentially reaching. So there is lots of different ways as to why your brand cohesion is important, and building that look and feel is the foundation of how you make people feel comfortable when they are interacting with you. So most obvious elements of a brand are look and feel. And we see that. People come to us all the time. They say, just listen, I just don't feel like we connect with how we visually present ourselves, whether that be online or in person, but we visually are not up to snuff. Like we feel as though we're running this really great shop. The team is all behind us, but our look is different, or we offer a lot of different services and we don't know how to consolidate it into one single message. So oftentimes the next elements that we're going to talk about are just as critical, but are very much overlooked.
To the point that you've just brought up, how people connect with and perceive your brand is really important. And how we've defined it here is your customer and client experience. So this often pertains to your product or service quality, the customer service delivery, interactions with your clientele and community, and consistency across touch points, because they all directly affect how people perceive your brand, which is obviously very important. Consistency is obviously important when it comes to any part of a key element within a brand identity. We want to be consistent across all of the things that we're talking about today, but it's especially important when it comes to customer and client experience. Since people tend to have emotional connections with the brands they interact with, they always remember how you made them feel. And so we can think about customer and client experience in kind of contrast to visual and verbal presentation, or even the core identity and foundation. Those might be how people look and feel, or how your brand looks and feels. But this customer and client experience is how people look at and feel about your brand. And so it's important to keep that in mind when making sure to define your brand identity in a cohesive way.
And the final piece of brand identity that sometimes people don't think about is internal culture. This is defined by how your team talks about and represents your brand or the brand that you work within. This is internal alignment. This happens possibly on a national scale, global scale at times. As we came out of COVID, we were brought in for a few projects that were to do with internal branding, because we were seeing that lots of nurses and physicians were leaving to be traveling nurses and physicians. And so that created this massive culture shock within the company. They were losing their employees. In essence, there was then a lull of clinicians that could offer services and nurses to be able to support those clinicians. And so people were really starting to look at their internal culture to develop that out, so that people felt those that were leaving were feeling more about their internal culture and feeling like it was a great place to work. And so that can help people stay. So this includes guidelines, expectations, training, values, leadership, and team bonding. The common gaps are assuming everyone already knows that you offer good work, or that undervaluing it internally. That happens a lot, where people are like, oh, we just do what we do. But what you do is valuable. And so pumping that up with your internal team is a necessary part of your brand cohesion. So the key takeaway on this slide would be live your values with and to pepper those throughout your leadership meetings, staff messaging. Even if you're a large corporation, build internal ad campaigns that can help people realize that they are a key part of this staff, this key part of this team. This type of methodology keeps everybody rowing in the same direction.
Absolutely. So we just kind of brushed on, why brand cohesion is important and also what the key elements of brand identity are. So the core identity foundation, visual and verbal presentation, customer and client experience, and internal culture. So now we're going to start talking about the importance of how to actually start aligning your brand. And we'd like to break it down in a few simple steps. So we start whenever someone comes in to ask us about how that they can align their brand, or even with a question that might not initially look like need for brand alignment. We start by auditing a brand to identify potential gaps. And once those gaps are identified, the next step is to create the right fix. So that means defining and strengthening the areas that need attention. So whether it's messaging, a new tagline, cohesive visuals, refined positioning, or a more human tone of voice, we work to find where the gaps are and work to find something that actually fits within that. And each of these things, all of the elements should align with and support one another. And the key is to identify what areas need improvement and rebuild them into a cohesive system that works together and isn't kind of siloed or isolated in its own little world. So after all those areas are aligned, we work to create and execute a brand strategy that reinforces that consistency, because it's all well and good to build something, but if you don't have a way to implement that which you have built, then you're kind of left in the same issue, which is not having everything actually be cohesive throughout.
All right, so we're going to move into some case studies now. The first case study that we decided to share with you, this was a project that's a few years old, but we still work with this team, believe it or not. And Police Athletic League is one of the oldest nonprofit service-based organizations in the city of New York. And they have 26 locations throughout the 5 boroughs. And each one of these locations was using different logos, colors, even making their audience feel a little bit different. So the messaging wasn't cohesive. It was like a brand free-for-all. So recognition, as we've talked about, leads to, in this case, families that didn't really connect all the dots. Sometimes they missed services and programs, and it was harder to promote. There was some miscommunication between each one of the locations. So what we had to do and what we defined as the fix would be was to be unifying the visual identity and consistent messaging across all locations. So spending a lot of time aligning on logo updates, colors, the usage of the logo and colors, the tone of voice, and the shared brand story. We executed this strategy, created a brand guidelines. We also created templates for each one of those locations to use. We built environmental graphics to bring in cohesiveness on the public level too. So those environmental graphics ran throughout the locations. And then we built messaging pillars. We gave all 26 locations tools to present one identity. So the impact of this is marketing and communications became consistent. They have in turn were filling their services faster and better. Messaging was clear, and the team was all aligned across all of the locations with a central person making sure that all of those locations were adhering to the standards of the brand guidelines and the templates that were created.
We had a similar situation with another client, Williams Lumber. So they had a very strong customer base and business with 7 locations throughout the Hudson Valley. And we identified that they were using, again, multiple logos that kind of needed refinement, and marketing was handled kind of in an isolated way. So it would be in various projects like a catalog here, a social post there, some ad campaigns that highlighted different products and services, but like ultimately looked and sounded different. And that lack of cohesion limited some of the brand recognition and impact. So our fix when we came in was creating a unified visual brand and messaging system that could be deployed across all channels. We ensured that print, social, video, and billboards all felt connected by creating a visual identity for the companies that worked across all of those different platforms. And then we also kind of narrowed in on what products or services were being focused on in a month-by-month basis. And so what that looked like was defining what they were going to advertise at any given month of the year and making sure that that was consistent as well across all of the different areas that they were advertising, again, whether it be print, video, social, or billboards. And that made everything feel a lot more cohesive. So we essentially applied those themes and messaging across all of the different platforms throughout the seasons, and the impact was stronger brand recognition. So they were also noticed everywhere, continued to align with the deep trust and loyalty that was already there, but built on that even more. We have 5 times more SEO ranked keywords ranking on the first page than when they first came in. So really not only building it in a visual way throughout the community, but also their online presence as well. We also have seen hundreds of monthly calls driven into the stores from these efforts. And the Google Maps and the Google Business Profile was also optimized. So we are seeing 90% more 4 to 5-star reviews. And then paid ad spend was also something that ultimately decreased for them, while traffic to seasonal landing pages increased. So because we saw that there was a bit of a disconnect between some of the different areas that they were advertising in, we were kind of able to hone in on what was actually necessary. And that ultimately saved them money, saved them effort, and was able to produce a larger impact. So this has all helped to streamline what their marketing efforts are, and ultimately has resulted in the clients reported increase in in-store foot traffic and overall growth. So it's a real testament to the importance of cohesion and what can happen once that's successfully achieved.
This is a great case study. All right. And Saliander, they are a 30-year-old soap company, started out in sensitive skin soap when the owner's and founder's son was allergic to everything on his skin. And so he developed a soap that was great. And I'm telling you right now, if you use Saliander soap, you don't go to another soap. It's so great. The ingredients in there are just fantastic. So we knew it was a brand that really was an awesome brand to work with. They had loyal customers and an inconsistent story, visuals, and messaging. So limited recognition. They'd really built themselves by going to farmers markets on the weekends. And they also had a distribution model to in-store sales across about 28 states at the time. So we unified the brand story. We did redesign the e-commerce site and got them up onto an e-commerce platform so they could sell online direct to consumer. And this allowed for some clear messaging to be really resonated direct again to the consumer. So creating visuals and messaging was important, and we implemented structured SEO language on the site about the ingredients that really upped the SEO and organic rankings of the site. And then we also have continued to work with them for the last few years on Google Ads. So So it really was a clear brand story, what we executed, highlighting the heritage of the company, the background, the sensitive skin focus, the ingredients. We just did a lot that we needed to do, as we've already mentioned. But with the Google Ads campaigns, we know PMAX has been introduced, so we have upgraded them to PMAX and seen some even further gains. But impact here has been steady, but they were featured on Today's Show this year, which has been really cool. And they've taken some real leaps where they've bought their own building. Obviously, that has been a direct effect of increased online sales, because direct to consumer is very important, of course, for this type of company and product. And we've seen customer loyalty grow and consistent. They're now represented in many more states, and really repeat buyers, as we mentioned, spend 60 to 70% more, and we've really worked to create that brand cohesion so that people can buy more consistently, and also have more. We're always driving for a bigger shopping spend, so each time someone spends on their site, we want that spend to be higher than it was the time before. So pushing for those types of fixes here, and Sally Anders has been a great client to work with. In fact, all of these clients have been fabulous clients to work with. We really enjoy what we do every single day as a team.
Yeah, and it's a little unfortunate we are limited on time. We have a lot more that we could talk about in that regard, but it's exciting too to talk about the ones that we have here today. So thank you for your time and participation. We're now going to open up for questions, and feel free to unmute if you want to ask those, or drop them in the chat, whatever you prefer.
I just want to say you guys have a strength in designing for the specific brands. I feel like some agencies, you can definitely see that they have a clear agency style, but I feel like you guys get the brand's needs and the customer base, and you create a brand style that's very specific to the company.
Oh, thanks, Heather.
Yeah.
That's great. It's great to hear your voice.
Yeah.
That's
And
awesome.
To that point, Heather, I really, that means a lot too, because I know, for those who don't know, Heather is also a designer. So it's great. It's very much a compliment. But to also bring up that point that when we work, we do attempt to do that, right? Because it's not our brand that we're representing when we work with clients, it's our clients' brands. And so having a better understanding and doing audits like this helps us kind of set a foundation for what their needs are, but their needs based in what their actual needs are. I know that I just essentially repeated the same thing over and over again, but it's like we try so hard to get to the core of what is actually needed, and not just, put a band-aid on whatever is. I know, for example, we've had clients come in and say, well, we really love a video produced. And when we take a look at their brand, what we realize is, well, we'd love to produce a video for you, but we can't in good conscience say that's the direction you need to go right now, because we've noticed these gaps in messaging. So let's address that first. That would be our recommendation. And then we can get to the video, or, in a similar, vein, the visuals aspects of a brand. So it's something we really try to incorporate in any of our approaches across the board with our clients.
I think the way we worked with you, Heather, too, was we would often have to go in and really uncover the crux of a patient's experience, right? And so with that, we have the knowledge and experience to be able to interview someone and really pull out those key messages that would resonate across a public campaign that was very focused on that patient. And so we had to take that individual experience and then, of course, replicate it build a message around that, to be able to then go out there and share that message with so many different hundreds of thousands of people that they would resonate with. And so that we do find that as something really unique, and we do enjoy doing that type of work. We really enjoy it.
And just a little background for others on the call. Ashworth did a lot of work with Crystal Run Healthcare. And so I got to get to know the team there. And I brought Mara Jennings Castelli onto the call. She's from Optum. She's also a designer. But you guys did a wonderful job on the presentation, and this was very interesting to join here.
Thank you, Maura. Thank you, Heather, for bringing Maura. It was great to see you both here today.
Yeah.
Great. Any other questions, Tracy, on that's come through to you as a moderator?
I can throw in a question. We've looked at a lot of existing brands and how you've tightened up and built out existing brands. How would you know when it's time for a full rebrand versus just tightening up an existing one?
Yeah, I mean, I guess when the brand itself doesn't reflect who you are or what you're doing. For example, this happens a lot with nonprofit organizations where they are doing great work, but they can't necessarily afford and don't have the funds to be able to go up and build a website that really reflects the level of service that they offer. And so I think if there's this disconnect between how you're offering your services and the amazing feedback that you're getting from your clients, and then your website doesn't feel that good, it just makes you feel a little deflated or a lot deflated, that oftentimes is a key indicator that you are not being represented the way that you should in any types of materials across the board. So, you know, compared to your competitors too, people oftentimes look at the competitors and say, wow, their site is looking really like fabulous, or their brand is looking great, their ads are looking really cool, and we need to compete. That oftentimes fuels people. They've got some internal things that they're wrangling with. Maybe it's an internal campaign they need to build to bring their team along, so we're all rowing in the same direction. So many different ways to really see whether you have whether it's time to do a rebrand or a little brand lift, or even build a branding campaign. So a few different ways of doing that. Oftentimes a client will come to us and they'll say, we've got so many services, we just don't know really whether we can have one message. You know, like, how do we talk about 20% of our business being residential and 80% of our business being commercial? Like, how do we build messaging that appeals to both audiences but doesn't lose traction on both ends? So that's something that we work through a lot, building, you know, core pillars of language and even visuals across different types of audience sets. So it's lots of different ways that we build. Well, honestly, to be fair, there's not many ways of us building. We have processes down, but we oftentimes, people feel as though every single time it's their own problem, but it's not. It's a problem that can be experienced by many different companies, and we have the expertise to come in, really sit down with you, ask the right questions, pull out the right language, and then move forward with what we know to be a foundational type of work that can help you build upon year after year. So yeah.
Absolutely. And to that point too, I think, you know, a lot of times when it comes to a full rebrand, it really is dependent upon the need. I feel like a full rebrand is quite a big undertaking. You know, it's like the visual, the messaging, the, you know, every aspect, the customer experience, the internal alignment. It's a lot of times we have like a pretty big brand overhaul, but not necessarily like across the board full rebrand. When I'm thinking about like when people come to a big change within their company, like with a law firm, for example, adding an additional partner, they don't need to completely change all of the internal processes or how their internal team aligns or anything like that, but they definitely need to change their logo, so it includes the next name that they need. So those kinds of things too, we tend to tailor whatever our recommendations are based on the needs that the client comes in with.
And sometimes it's just humanizing a brand too. Like, oftentimes when you grow, you become a little bit big. And so you probably have noticed this when, like, you know, as people expand and acquire and grow, they often lose that human touch. And so oftentimes you'll see billboards and it's like, doesn't it even communicate to where your region is? You know, it doesn't communicate to any of your audience that's in that region. And so humanizing a brand is oftentimes something that we're called in to do, because we do have this human side to us that we really can connect with people. And oftentimes, I don't know why we have it, but we do. And we like to look and make people feel emotional when they see something that's been produced by us. We do create that, like, you know, goosebump type of effect. So that's where we also shine. It's like we oftentimes invited in to humanize a brand. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining us. It was really great to have you here and chat through some things, and look forward to some more webinars that are going to be coming up soon. But we really enjoy doing these, and we really enjoy the work that we do, and we'll be in touch next week.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.